You know, today's topic is one of the most needed because as I look around and see the, if you will, sort of the spiritual landscape that I've now been able to observe for over 32 years in our city, I see the remnant of a lot of people who've kind of given up on their church, given up on their relationships, and in some cases, given up on God. This is of great concern to me. George Barna, who is one of the most prominent Christian pollsters out there, says that church attendance in the last 15 years has declined from 43% to 36% in the United States. Now, that may not sound like a huge number to you, but let me just tell you, that's millions of people nationwide who are no longer going to church. And I don't know about you, but I frequently encounter now, more often than not, that people, when you talk to them about, hey, well, where's your church? Well, I really don't go, or I'm a member of, but that doesn't mean that they have any real affiliation. And when it comes to their relationship with God, there's nothing there. You know, maybe more important for you, though, is that it's not so much about church, it's about you. And what I want to share tonight has to do with something going on in your life, perhaps. Maybe you're here and you're just about ready to give up on your marriage. You might have wandered into your place, your location, wherever you're worshiping with us, and you're having such family issues that you want to walk out. Just give up on it all and start over again doing your own thing. Some of you have jobs that you can't take another week of it the way it's going. Some of you have physical issues that are just tormenting you. Some of you have financial things that never seem to end, and the calls never stop coming, and so on. And many times these things are intertwined to the point where you just don't know if you can go on another day. I would go on as much as to say that some of you have said this about coming to church today. You said, if I don't hear something hopeful in church, I'm not going back. I've got something else I can do with my time. Listen, friends, life is difficult for us all, isn't it? I mean, we all have some part of our life, if we're honest, that maybe is a struggle. Some of you, it's the job direction you've been on for so many years, it's going nowhere. For others of you, it could be you're a student and you just have no idea about what you're supposed to do with your life. I got to tell you, being in ministry for all these years, there are days that I say, really, Lord, do I want to keep doing what I've been doing? I mean, it's not always easy. But please listen. If you're here today and you're just kind of at the end, and I would go on, and I don't want to put any kind of fear in anybody, but I'm pretty certain that there's at least one person, maybe a handful of people that are you're this close to giving up on life itself. If that's you, you're in the right place at the right time. And you've come to a time, and you've come to a place, and you've come to a moment when I have a message that I believe, if you'll seize it, take hold of it for yourself, can literally change the direction, the course of your entire spiritual journey in your walk with God. And if you believe that we serve and love a God who's able to change your marriage and renew your vows and cause you to love again, if you believe that we know and love a God who's able to bring healing and transformation into your body, if you believe there's a God out there who loves you enough to guide every step of the way, would you just give him praise right now and just lift up your hands and say, thank you, Lord. Yeah. It is true. Now, we're in Hebrews 12, and if you have an outline, why don't you grab it out of your notes? Highly recommend you take a couple of notes, because in Hebrews 12, and I have to tell you, someone once told me, he said, if you can't preach from Hebrews 12, you need a new calling in life. I mean, this is like the filet mignon of preachers, and so don't judge me on that, but I'm just telling you, this is great stuff, and it's about life. I mean, that's what's so amazing about it. And let's just look right here at the core issue. The core issue is this. Something's been missing in the church, and that's something that's causing people to fall by the wayside, causing people to give up on the Lord, causing people to walk out in their marriages, causing people to point fingers at other people and bring down the reputation of the kingdom of God. That missing thing is perseverance. The ability to press through with endurance until you reach your goal. Look at Hebrews 12:1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with, say it with me, perseverance, the race marked out for us. And friends, that race corporately for us as a church has implications, but primarily today, I'm going to be talking about our personal lives, individually, you and me. And I want to say something that's just kind of been, I just can't dismiss it, so I think it's from the Lord. Be very careful not to use that judgmental sort of grid that some of us, me included, put up sometimes when we look at somebody else's life and we said, you know, if I had their life, if I had their calling, if I was living in their neighborhood, if I had their kind of freedom and liberty, sure, I'd be doing whatever God wanted. And what I found out is we are oftentimes prone to make judgments of people simply based on external things that literally have very little to do with what's going on in their hearts. I was having a conversation with somebody recently at one of our events where cars gather, and we were talking about life, and this is a person who's from a upper-end neighborhood in our city. That's all I need to say. Person who's been very successful in the corporate world. But as a little bit of time went on, and he revealed to me that his spouse was going through a battle with cancer, that one of his children was in and out of institutions for behavioral issues, and that his company was going through a, quote, restructuring, and that he may not have a job. I realized, wow, all the things that I thought he had going, all this, really, I just had the very top part of the waves in sight. So let's understand that about each other, okay? Let's put down those glasses and look at our own hearts, and as we look at others, look at them just a little more compassionately than we're prone to do. Listen, we all want to hear the Lord say, well done, good and faithful servant, don't we? Matthew 25, verse 23. I want to hear that so much. I've been living my life wanting to hear those words from the Lord, and I believe you do too. But the only way is to run the race until that day with perseverance, endurance. If you're taking notes, that's the first one. That's what you want to do. And, I was thinking about this. And by the way, all of Hebrews 12 in the beginning is a very clear athletic analogy. It uses language that you can't, even I get it, right? It's about a race. It's about something obviously physical. It's something that was very much a part of the Roman culture back then. And as I was preparing this message, off and on, I would attend to this, but it happened to be during the time that the Tour de France was taking place. Now, how many of you know what that is? Before I lose everybody, okay. I hope here, most everywhere, you just have heard of that. It's the most prestigious bicycle race in the world, and I'm not by any means a big cyclist. I'm just learning the sport and enjoying it, but it just seemed to fit in with this whole theme. And here's just a couple of graphs for those of you who don't maybe fully appreciate it. The Tour de France goes through usually about 21 stages that cover 2,162 miles in 19 days. Now, that doesn't maybe register completely, but let me give you an idea. And by the way, it's not just all like, walking from here to Sheets where it's flat. Show the next graph, please. A lot of it includes mountains where you're climbing up mountains. Some of them 8, 9, 10% gradient. And then you go down the other side of that mountain up to 60 miles an hour on a bicycle. I don't know about you. I don't have that kind of endurance and stamina. I watch these men that start this thing, and I don't know, what does it take to get in that kind of shape? Well, here's a little clue. The average professional cyclist rides between 20 and 25,000 miles a year. Okay, frame of reference for that? That's like going to Breezewood and back twice a week, every week of the year. Ride out, spend the night, ride home. Day off, ride out, da, 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 da. That's a lot of miles. I mean, and that's not including all the other stuff, weightlifting, all the rest. It's an enormous commitment. And why? Here's the last slide. Why do they do that? To stand on the podium. There he is. Chris Froome, the guy in the yellow jersey, he's from Great Britain. He won the Tour de France this year. And for him, it was a lifetime achievement. But I would venture to say a month from now, most people won't have any idea who he is unless they're really into the sport. But boy, it's to take commitment, right? Why am I sharing this? Just to give you an idea, it takes enormous sacrifice sometimes to persevere. But I'm here for one reason, and that's this. It's at the end of this opening paragraph on your outline. So that you, look at the end of verse 3, you will not grow weary and lose heart. That's why I want to share about perseverance. So that you, my loved one, will not grow weary and lose heart in this thing called your journey of faith, your journey of life. Now, some of you are thinking, okay, I'm with you. I don't want to be one of those people that just gives up on God. I don't want to quit. But you don't know what I'm going through. I need someone to tell me, how do I do that? Not just what to do, but how to do that. And I'm going to do my best from this passage to give you 4 specific ways. And if you have the guts to do so, and you write these down and maybe just check yourself on these once a week, I will promise you that a year from now, your spiritual journey will be heading in the right direction, and you will be closer to God than you've ever been before. Here they are, right out of the text that we've been working our way through, Hebrews chapter 12. Mark these down. And by the way, if you happen to be here and hey, you're doing great and life's just fine, I'm glad for you. Congratulations. Check back with me on Tuesday, right? How many of you know life can come at you really hard and really fast, and that phone call or that doctor's report or that deal or whatever that changes your life can happen just like that. Or maybe you know someone that might need this if you don't. Here's the first one. Run with a point of reference. First blank in your outline. First point in your outline. Run with a point of reference. Very important. I don't know about you, but I know myself. When you're in the daily grind, so to speak, whether it's parenting or commuting to work or on the sales calls or, studying through the stuff that you've got at school, whatever it is, do you ever think, you know what, I feel so alone in this. This is I just feel, it's one thing to be all together and to celebrate and have worship and praise and see people that care about me and all that, but it's another thing when I'm just grinding it out and it just gets to be awfully heavy. And I wonder sometimes, does anyone really know what I'm going through? And are you ever tempted just to feel like, why am I doing this? What's the purpose? What keeps me going? Why? What's this about? Well, with all respect for how heavy it is for you, let me remind you of the context of the people that were receiving this letter. The book of Hebrews was written to the Jewish Christians who were being confronted on a daily basis with the threat that if they didn't go back to the Jewish faith and give up this crazy following Jesus stuff, that they were going to suffer dire consequences. Friends, I'm not talking about, just a little gossip. I'm not talking about people rolling their eyes and say, you're weird, you go to Northway. I'm not saying something like that. I'm talking about literally people having their homes confiscated, having their businesses shut down, and in worst case scenarios, being physically tortured and persecuted because they wouldn't renounce the name of Jesus. That's the context of the whole book of Hebrews. By the way, we don't know much more about where Hebrews came from. We don't know the author. Even our beloved friend Dr. Jim Platt, who has been just ordained a great student of this book, hasn't quite convinced me yet about that. We're working on that. It's a tough one. Many think it was Paul, some think it was Apollos. Whoever it was a brilliant scholar, understood the Old Testament and the New Testament and how they fit together. That's about all we know about him. And that he liked coffee. Hebrews. Okay, but a little pity laugh here. I'll take it. Whatever. All right. Surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. Now, I've read that text hundreds of times. And the image, of course, is running into the Colosseum. I've had the privilege of seeing the Grand Colosseum in Rome. It's an amazing spectacle. And I've always pictured that what this is it's supposed to be for you and me an idea that there's all these folks that have preceded us to heaven, and they're up there saying, go, go, Becky. Go, David. Keep it going. You're almost there, Carl. Keep after it. Jim, keep going. Sandy, don't quit. And I've always thought of it that way. And maybe that is the way it is. But then I came across this idea as I was studying this time. It could also mean that we are to look at those who've preceded us and realize that they are a witness to us. In fact, scholar F.F. Bruce says it this way. He says, it's not so much they who look to us as we who look to them. And you think about it in that way, and you think about the people that have preceded us, and I'm sure many of you have had family members or friends, and certainly historical characters, who are inspiring to you because of what they accomplished. Maybe that's the cloud of witnesses that we're to put our eyes on. And all of Hebrews that precedes this, and especially chapter 11, that's the great hall of faith, isn't it? Think of that, the story that unfolds as you read Hebrews 11, the people that it goes from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob to Joseph and Moses and all the rest. And then let me just read a few verses starting in 11:32. Maybe we'll put these up on the screen for you. And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell about Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword. You see, these are great accomplishments of people who persevered, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Women received back their dead, raised to life again. There were others who were tortured, refusing to be released so that they might gain an even better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. You see, not everybody who took this route got off with a victory. Some suffered along the way. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, mistreated, but the world was not worthy of them. Friends, listen, this isn't a promise that everything's going to turn out just peachy if you persevere, but it is a promise that you'll be in the company of those who've trusted God and would stand to say, it was worth it. And by the way, I love the fact that in that list of the hall of faith is a prostitute by the name of Rahab. No, Abraham, I understand, and Isaac, and a prostitute? How'd she? She ended up in the hall of faith because she helped a couple of the spies that were sent out to understand the way to the promised land, to escape the sword. And you know why I think God put that in there? He put that in there so that you and I could realize that nobody is ever too far from God that he can't redeem them and use them for his glory. That's an important word for some of you right now. Some of you parents, Your kids are never too far from God. Some of you kids, your parents are never too far from God, that he can't redeem them. So, that's the point of reference that we got to start with, all right? Understand that, and here's all I know. I'm not where I used to be. I'm not where I want to be. But I'm certainly at a better place than I deserve to be. Amen? By God's grace, I'm at a place that I anticipate I haven't seen God's best quite yet in my life. And that's the same with you. Number two, you got to run. If you want to persevere, you got to run without baggage. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If you want to persevere, you must willfully stop doing some of the things that are weighing you down. All right? Now, this sounds pretty simple, but it's a little more complicated than you might first think. Look at this. It says, throw off everything that hinders, and it's translated literally, or things that weigh you down in some translations. Now, for many of us, things that weigh us down are just the activities of life, just the stuff of life. How many know we live in a culture that just has an affinity for stuff? I could be wrong, but I think the entire city of Pittsburgh is being overrun by brown trucks that say UPS on them. And they stop. I mean, it seems like night and day, all across the city, bringing more stuff from QVC, CBC, NBC, HSN, eBay, Amazon. I mean, it's easy to get stuff. How many of you I have stuff in my basement that grows its own stuff. I've gone down to my basement. I said, we didn't have that before. No, but my stuff had baby stuff. And it just doesn't matter. I mean, we're overrun with stuff. And it can become, honestly, it can become a distraction. When your stuff has stuff, you're in trouble. You know, and let me tell you another thing. I don't have mine with me, fortunately. But some of us have a little bit of weight the size of a screen that you carry around. And your eyes are always on that screen. I see people walking on their screen, and I just, how they do not walk into holes and pillars, I don't know. But they're just, and they'll walk right by a person that they could say hello to and talk to, but instead they're talking to their screen. You know, and I don't know if that's you, but I will say this. Technology is a great asset, but don't let it become something that weighs you down. I forget how many hours the average 18-year-old spends on their phone, but it's a lot. Just a word. I mean, don't get sucked underneath by the weight of it all. Don't get caught in the web of technology to the point where you break relationships over it. Wait. Wait is a big thing when it comes to persevering. You know that? How many people run? How many people run for exercise? Let me see your hand. Runners. Okay. How many runners would you happily just throw a 20-pound sack of cement on the back of your shoulders and then run around North Park or South Park 5 times? No. What would you do naturally? You'd get rid of as much weight as possible, right? I mean, it's true in just about any sport. I mean, you want to get rid of the weight. And so it is with us. Just get rid of those things that bog us down. And the sin that so easily entangles is the other part of that. Isn't it interesting that the writer of Hebrews knew that sin easily entangles? How many of you know that it's just the way it is about life? We don't have to work hard to find sin. How many think sin just sort of finds you? Do you ever think that? I mean, I don't have to work up to find a way to sin. It's my default position. How about you? And let me tell you something. It starts early. Do you know that? Let me show you a picture now. I love my grandkids. Let's put that picture up. And is there a cuter picture than that? But see, inside that beautiful picture is the heart of a little sinner. He's thinking right now, I'd like to drive this car right out of here. Notice he already picked up a tattoo on his right forearm. Heading down the tat tubes. No, he's a sweet little kid. But just like me and just like you, sin finds him. And that's why Jesus came. Because there's no other explanation. No other way to get through it, no other way to get around it. It's just part of who we are. And so watch, loved ones. I'm not just talking about the gross kind of sin, all right? We could get into all kinds of detail, but it's some of the less obvious things that I think trip us up. Judgmentalism. That pridefulness that I know better than you, so I'm not even going to listen to what you have to say. Laziness. The greed of excess. Lust. Habits. Even addictions. They entangle us and trip us up and cause us not to be able to persevere. My last message just 3 weeks ago was on forgiveness. Do you know I got over 75 emails from people saying, I struggle with what you talked about. And it's so hard for me to forgive. Wow. So, that's another one. So, run without the baggage, number 3. And here's where it gets a little bit of fun. How about running with others? 6 times in 3 verses, the author uses the plural of these pronouns, we, us, and you. And he recognizes what I think a lot of Christ followers struggle with, and that is that we do better when we run together. We do better when we lock arms, join hands, be part of the peloton, part of the crowd that's making their way toward God's reward. We dramatically increase the likelihood of failing when we venture out on our own and just do our own thing. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that I would not be here today. And perhaps God would have found someone else to start this church, do the things he's done. If it had been for one person that just wouldn't give up on me back when I was in college. And if you've been around North Whitehall, you've heard the story enough. I won't revisit it. But one guy who just, every time I would say no, he said, well, how about tomorrow? And he just kept after me long enough. I finally yielded and realized that I'd been turning my back not just on him, but on God. And he helped me to grow and understand the Bible for myself and to pray for myself and to share accordingly. People make all the difference in this journey, friends. Up in my office, I have a little wall of faith. And on that wall of faith, there's some people up there that I've been blessed to meet and have inspired me, and people of great accomplishment. People that you would recognize. Some years ago, 1993, I think it was, Billy Graham was in town, and I had the privilege of being part of that team that brought him in. And there's a picture with Carol and me and Billy Graham. That's a wonderful privilege. But I also have some pictures of people in there that you wouldn't necessarily recognize. They've inspired me because of their incredible faith in really difficult times. I think of Ryan Adler when he almost lost his life in an accident pole vaulting. I have a picture with Ryan. Carol just at some event celebrating together the fact that he stood in faith. Just inspires me and put on my wall to know that. I have a picture of Emmanuel Pothen, a young man who's giving his life to reaching his fellow countrymen from India. Because, you see, we all need to be inspired by people. And sometimes we need to be the ones that do the inspiring. It's just, the best picture of this that came to my mind was back when I was in college, I had a fraternity brother that I really liked a lot. He was not a Christ follower and did not behave like a Christ follower. In terms of his attitudes and so on. But we were friends, and he was a positive guy, and he was kind of an encouraging guy to me, and so on. But here's the deal. It got down to graduation time, and the reality was that he was not going to get to graduate with the rest of us because someone had given the school an endowment, and part of the endowment was that every graduating senior, it was an all-male school at the time, had to be able to run the mile in 8 minutes in their senior year. Now, if you don't know a lot about running, that's no grand accomplishment. That's actually a fast walk. But my friend Dave Stovall wasn't able to do it. And he wasn't eating the right stuff, and he was partying way too much, and he didn't care that much. But he was a bright guy. I mean, he just had the grades, but he couldn't do the mile in 8 minutes. And so and a couple of us just decided 2 days before the deadline, you know what, Stovall? You're going to run it. We want you to graduate with us. We want you to walk down and get your diploma with the rest of us. Because what happens was they ended up mailing the diploma out, but the family and everyone missed out on the whole thing if that's what happened. So we got him up about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Went to an enclosed facility, got a university official, and we started running beside him. We said, Stovall, you're going to make this. You're going to make this. We started running. And 6'4", 250, 260, and he's kind of lumber along. And, we got talking a little bit, and he started laughing a little bit. And those first 2 laps weren't too bad because I got his mind off of it. But that third lap, oh, my gosh, it was like pulling a cement truck. And halfway through the 4th lap, he was wheezing because he'd been a smoker for a while and the whole thing. And he said, I'm not going to be able to make this. And I said, Stovall, you're going to. And finally, as we crossed, I could look up and see that we had about a minute left to go about 200 yards. And he said, I got to quit. I can't keep going. Well, what I did, this is him running this way. I ran this way, and I've been running. I said, Stovall, you're going to make it. You're going to make it. You're going to make it. And I kept saying, look at my eyes. I said, even a turtle could make 200 yards in a minute. You can do this. And he said, 200 yards, I can do that. And it's like he became like Eric Little, in Chariots of Fire, and put his shoulders back in, and he pumped up, and we dragged over the finish line. Clock went off, 7:58. Yeah, 7:58. So I'll put his hands up like this, and then he fell over, passed out. That's an absolute true story in every detail. But you know what? When we had graduation and his parents were there with his family, it was an exciting moment. He went on to be a great dad and a great husband and ended up his career as the CEO of Steinmart, which you may have heard of. Did really well with his life. Amazing stuff. Run the race with others. And finally, this is the one that, you need to, when it comes to persevering, you need to run with confidence. And let me just quickly touch on this because I could go on for a lot longer if I had the time, but time's about gone. Let me just say this. It's easy at times to doubt yourself and to doubt that you can make it. And here's why. Because there's so many obstacles out there that we are inclined to keep our eyes really drilled down on the obstacles in front of us. And every one of them looks like a mountain, like I showed you in those graphs. Every one of them looks like I'll never get up that. I'll never have enough money. I will never have enough of this, or I'll have too many of these that are, and whatever it might be. And that reminds me of something I learned almost 20 years ago, and I'll end with this. I was invited to be part of an advanced driving school out in Ohio. And as part of that, if you've seen this, forgive me, but a lot of you haven't, so here's what we did. The driving instructor took these cones, and he paced them out about every 50 feet. And he said, okay, well, what don't you do? I want you to pile into this little sports sedan that we had. He said, and I want you to cut a line through these cones. I want you to go as fast as you can without hitting a cone. Wow, that's no big deal, right? So the 4 of us got in the car with the driver, so it's total 4 people. And the first guy thought he was, Jeff Gordon or Tony Kanaan or somebody like that. And, he went done about 55 miles an hour, and he clipped this cone. By the third cone, we were sideways. Toast. He was done. Next guy learned fast. He said, you know what? That's not going to work. I'll go about 10 miles an hour. So we just noodled our way. And the guy, at the end, the instructor put DNF, did not finish. He said, I finished. He said, yeah, but I wasn't awake, so I didn't get to see it. So it was my turn, and I said, okay, so it's somewhere between 55 and 10, right? I got to be. So I went in there about 40, and I got, and I did first cone fine, second cone a little bit tight, third cone, could feel sort of the weight shifting. Fourth cone, I hit it. Fifth cone, down it went. Sixth cone, done. And instructor said, okay, let me just tell you what you're doing wrong. All of you did the same thing. So, well, what is it? He said, well, you're all looking at the cones. We said, well, you said don't hit the cones, right? So how am I going to not hit the cones if I don't look at the cones? He said, let me show you. We all pile in the car. He says, he picked a spot out in the horizon. He said, that's where I'm putting my eyes. Floors the car, 45, 50 miles an hour. And the car just goes, shoo, shoo. It's just as smooth as hot knife through butter. Came to a stop. Jaws dropped. How'd you do that? He said, the key is you find a place on the horizon, you put your eyes there, and the way you've been made, and he didn't use any God references, he just said the way you've been made is that your brain tells your body what it needs to do, your eyes and everything, so that you do exactly what you need to do to miss the cones and finish the run. And I said, we don't believe it. I said, try it. Got in, turned the car around, put my eyes on the horizon. Now, I wasn't smelling, no, I don't want to mislead you. I mean, the car did a little of this, but amazingly, didn't knock a single cone over. That has stuck with me my entire life, last 20 years since I did that. If you want to run a race with perseverance and endure to the end, don't look at the cones. Don't look at the things in front of you, the problem. Put your eyes on Jesus. Remember, that's how it ends. Fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter. You can really translate that, the champion and finisher of your faith. Friends, the key to persevering is where you place your eyes, because if you place your eyes on him, if he builds it, it's going to last. If he's the one you're focusing on, you will finish. You will get the victory. I'm going to ask all the campus pastors to come up and lead their teams in prayer.